लटवा न्यूज के स्टूडियो से नवीनतम अपडेट।
शिलोंग में एक परिवार द्वारा नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न इंदिरा गांधी रीजनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ हेल्थ एंड मेडिकल साइंस निग्रिम्स पर चिकित्साई लापरवाही का आरोप लगाने की एक दिन बाद संस्थान के निदेशक नलिन मेहता और वरिष्ठ सर्जन डॉक्टर तोपनो ने किसी भी लापरवाही से इनकार किया और कहा कि मरीज को व्यापक चिकित्सा देखभाल मिली। मेहता ने अस्पताल के ऑक्सीजन वितरण प्रणाली में बदलाव पर स्पष्टीकरण दिया, जिसमें सिलेंडर की वजह पाइप का उपयोग किया गया, जिससे संभावित भ्रम पैदा हुआ। इसके बावजूद मेहता ने प्रोटोकॉल के अनुरूप जांच का आश्वासन दिया है। संस्थान के निदेशक ने मरीज के पहले से मौजूद स्वास्थ्य चुनौतियों की पुष्टि की, जिसमें हृदय, छाती और अंत को प्रभावित करने वाले मल्टी ड्रग प्रतिरोधी तपेदिक MDR TB भी शामिल है। अंतर टीबी के कारण गंभीर रुकावट के कारण तत्काल सर्जरी की आवश्यकता थी। सर्जरी के बाद 23 वर्षीय सदस्य की मौत के बाद परिवार ने लापरवाही का आरोप लगाया था। अज्ञात अंतों की समस्या के लिए 17 जनवरी को किए गए सर्जरी के कारण ऑपरेशन के बाद अपर्याप्त देखभाल की आरोप लगाए गए। परिवार का दावा है कि गहन चिकित्सा इकाई में 4 दिन के बाद मरीज को उसकी स्थिति के स्पष्टीकरण के बिना निचले वार्ड में ले जाया गया। उनकी चिंताओं और ICU में लौटने के अनुरोध के बावजूद उनकी दलीलें कथित तौर पर अनुत्तरित रही।
We had a very sick patient who had multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. She was admitted with us, she was investigated, and she had obstruction. She was not passing, so intestinal obstruction. And normally when the obstruction is for a long time, surgical intervention is required. So after the investigation was done, the surgeons were consulted and they suggested surgery. Initially the patient refused. The next day the patient agreed to undergo surgery. And this surgery, because the patient is very sick, is basically not very extensive. It just bypasses the obstruction, temporary relief from the obstruction, so that when the patient recovers, later on extensive surgery may be undertaken. In the meantime, because of probably the drugs that she was taking, there was liver damage. Post surgery, she was admitted in the ICU. She had difficulty in breathing. The doctors wanted consent for intubation. Intubation is where a tube is put to help in breathing. She refused. The next day, when her condition worsened, she agreed for intubation. Intubation was done. There was trouble breathing because she had, like they say, water in the lungs. She is a known heart patient also. She had heart treatment earlier, maybe in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And eventually the patient succumbed. And the controversy erupted probably because some of the relatives of the patients were not very clear about the details, or they did not understand the technical details that were explained by the doctors. So that probably is one of the issues. Beyond that, I am not aware of how the newspaper reported negligence, because every investigation and the standard treatment that is given to such patients was given by NEIGRIHMS.
After the operation, the condition of the patient was not very good. So because of the condition not being very good, the patient was shifted to the main ICU. We have multiple ICUs. So this main ICU is the one which is one of the best that we have around here, and that is managed by the anesthetist. So patient was kept there from 17th up to 20th. When the condition of the patient became little better, the patient was shifted down to the other ICU, which is a little lesser ICU, that is called the surgical ICU. Usually we keep all those post-op patients and sick surgery cases over there. Over there, if they become better, they go to the ward. If they become worse, they go back to the ICU. So that was the condition of the patient. So till 21st, patient was more or less okay. But the next day, on 22nd, she had this breathing difficulty. And that was probably because of accumulation of fluid in the lungs. And also there was extensive damage to the lungs because of the earlier tuberculosis that she had. So by the time they are MDR, before MDR they are taking usually the other normal drugs, and then they have been taking other drugs also,
MDR
which is for multi-drug resistance tuberculosis. Okay, so unfortunately, the general condition of the patient was quite bad. And there was one more thing. We had planned to give her 5 days of albumin. That's an injection that helps reduce the collection of fluid in the body. Okay. Unfortunately, because we lost the patient, we could not do all that. And the rest, I think, has been well dealt with by my director. If you have any, what happens many a times is there is actually a difference in perception. Now the patient, what I understand was, patient was complaining that she is not able to breathe. Okay. But at that time, patient had refused intubation, but she was being given oxygen by mask. Now, one of the things I got to understand was patient did not see any oxygen cylinder. But here in the ICU, we have actually the gas. We have gas pipelines, and it comes through basically pipeline, the gas. So it is very, very improbable that in a patient who is as sick as that, we would not be giving oxygen. So I don't know. I think this is probably a misconception somewhere. Surgery person who's been there more than 35 years in this profession, I can give you a general outline as to what we do. And what has transpired between the doctor and the patient, I won't know unless I really ask them or somebody gives me that information. Generally what happens is, I don't think any further operation from surgery part would have been required, because like initially we told, a patient whose condition is very bad, we don't try to do the full surgery at that time. We do just enough. Like supposing there's a road which has got multiple potholes and very badly damaged. At most what we do is we provide a bypass. We do the repair later. So in this condition, same thing. Once the general condition becomes better, then only we are going to do the full surgery. You know? So I don't know what has transpired, so I cannot really comment on that part. But the approach usually is this. So from surgery side, I don't think any further operation would have been contemplated.
Every bed has an oxygen and vacuum port from which oxygen is given. We have a centralized oxygen, delivery system. Let me assure you that in this entire region, NEIGRIHMS is probably the best hospital which provides quality service, and for majority of the patients, the service is free of cost. Most of them who are taking the government health insurance schemes, etc.
लठवा न्यूज के स्टूडियो से नवीनतम अपडेट।